Hour 3 of Overdrive on a Mail-It-In Friday, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP is serving fish bowls and ice-cold pints on the patio all summer long, so grab your sunscreen and let's have ourselves a weekend. The Boston Pizza patio is calling. Hour 3 of Overdrive, Mike Distefano and Frankie Corrado in with you. It's been a bit of a tough day in the hockey world, especially mourning the tragic loss of Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew, who, if you're just joining us, passed away late last night. They were out biking on the eve of their sister's wedding and were unfortunately struck by an alleged drunk driver who is currently in custody. And they, didn't make it, sadly. And we've had a bunch of people on to kind of talk about the man that Johnny Gaudreau was. Gord Miller joined us. Brian Burke was gracious to give us some time at 5 o'clock to join us. You can go back into the podcast and you can listen to those. Also up on the web on tsn.ca. Those interviews will be there as well. And Salim Valji is also going to join us in about 5 minutes or so. He's down on location right now. You've got a lot of outpour from the city of Calgary and that, that city and the community going and showing their respects and support to Johnny Gaudreau. You've seen scenes of flowers and Skittles and hockey sticks, mini sticks, all being placed down on kind of the base of the Saddle Dome. So lots of people, kind of mourning the loss of Johnny Gaudreau today.
Listen, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's tragic. It's devastating what's happened. It's obviously, it affects the family first and foremost. It affects the hockey community, the sports community, and the communities that, these gentlemen lived in and played in. And for Johnny Gaudreau, we talked to Brian Burke, and he fully embraced and fully immersed himself into the community in Calgary. It was never an issue for him to get involved and do a little extra. And that's a community that would be feeling this today, just like Columbus. And, Johnny chose to go to Columbus to be closer to home. And a lot of people showing their love and respect by Nationwide Arena in Columbus. And, we've seen...
I saw they also did have a moment of silence earlier today.
Yeah.
The Reds had an afternoon game, and they had a moment of silence for Johnny Gaudreau there as well for the Cincinnati Reds.
And we've just seen this outpouring of, beautiful words and messages from...
Yeah, there it is up on TSN2 right now.
We've seen hockey players, ex-teammates. We've seen Jalen Hurts, Mike Trout. This is something that has touched the sports community, not just the hockey community. And, in a terrible situation, it's nice to see people lend their voice and, just kind of pay tribute to Johnny and his brother.
Yeah, Rasmus Anderson, who played many seasons with Johnny Gaudreau in Calgary, I thought he had a really, heart-touching thing to say this afternoon. Trying to find the right words today is not easy. You are a hell of a hockey player, but it's the person, Johnny, that always is going to be with me, one of my closest friends. It didn't matter if we hadn't spoken in a day, a week. We always knew what we had each other. There hasn't been a dry eye in the Anderson house today. We all love you, Johnny. Looking back at the picture, and there was a picture of him and Johnny Gaudreau. I think it was at their wedding, and hung over the next day. And it's really sad day, really tragic day.
Yeah, the video of Johnny Gaudreau up on was it Brady Tkachuk's shoulders
at Matt Tkachuk's wedding?
Is that what that was? That was. And I think that's just a small snippet of how loved he was. And, it goes without saying, we send our heartfelt and deepest condolences to the Gaudreau family.
Absolutely, 100%. I believe there's a GoFundMe out there right now that's kind of making the waves. Because sadly, along with Johnny Gaudreau was his brother Matthew Gaudreau, 29 years old, even younger. Leaving behind, a wife who was pregnant. So there's a GoFundMe for his family that's kind of going on out there right now. And it's a sad day. It really, really is a sad day. And we remember Johnny Gaudreau and kind of what his legacy was in hockey. And, you talked about it. You talk about it from a personal experience. You got to watch, you got to play against him, shared an ice, sheet with the guy multiple times. You know, as a fan, someone who just watched the game, I always really, as someone who's also of a shorter stature, I also really appreciated like what that guy was able to do for his size, like incredibly undersized, but overskilled, you know, like, and he's just somebody who was able to, you know, defy all the odds. Like I jokingly talking about what we had to overcome as Team Hazen Bro going up against, you know,
the
Luke
powerhouse
and the powerhouse that
a Super Bowl champion.
Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
But this guy truly, you know, at 5'9", 165 pounds soaking wet. And it didn't matter. Yeah. Did not matter. He was getting pucks off you, and he was going through you. He was finding a way to get through you and get on net. And I think one of my favorite kind of Gaudreau moments, and the OT winner a couple of years ago, and you know, it turned out to be the final season that he was in Calgary. But the overtime winner, Game 7 against the Dallas Stars, just roofs it top corner right above Jake Ottinger, who was having an absolute game.
The only way you could have beaten him that night. That is the only way.
He just snuck it right. I think it was short side too, if I'm not mistaken. Just snuck it right under the bar, right over his shoulder. The only way to beat him on that goal, as you watch the replay here. And of course it was Johnny Hockey who scored that goal. Game 7, double overtime, to send the Calgary Flames to the second round. Of course it was Johnny Hockey.
And you know, watching him, if you stayed up on a Saturday night and you caught the Calgary Flames, he was worth the price of admission.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was one of those guys where when he was playing for the Flames, if you had tickets to watch that team play, you could say, I'm going to watch Johnny Hockey tonight.
Yeah.
Like that guy sold tickets. That guy was, you know, worth going down to the arena to watch, whether it was in Calgary or if they were the road team. You know, you could have that circled. And there's not, like, we talk about it from time to time. Not every team has that kind of guy. He was that kind of guy.
Yep. And let's head out west now. Our TSN Calgary bureau reporter, Salim Valji, is in Calgary right now. Salim, thank you for joining us on a day like today.
Yeah, it's surreal. It's nuts. I still can't believe it. I started my day in Dublin, so like my phone was blowing up in the morning just because of the time difference, and like you're used to getting messages just from people, but then you kind of dig into it and you realize like, holy smokes, this is actually a real thing. And I don't know, like it's a tragedy. I think people in Calgary really feel it, even though he left here. They love him. He was a son over here, right? Like an American that chose to stay here and nearly signed a contract extension. It's unfathomable, and I don't think the people I've texted in the organization, like, no one's quite come to terms with it yet, I don't think, and that's probably the same for a lot of people in the hockey world, including us.
Well, you're in Calgary. Maybe you can kind of just paint us a little bit of a scene as far as you know, the outpouring of love for Johnny Gaudreau there.
Yeah, well, I've seen that. Even like his whole thing, one of them was like purple Gatorade, right? And apparently it's been really tough to find purple Gatorade in the city today. The Saldo Monument, I'm going to be there in a couple of minutes. Like, it's growing and people are dropping by. It's just, I think, somber more than anything. Even in my condo lobby a few minutes ago, people were talking about it. And, you know, even if you weren't a Flames season ticket holder or like you didn't watch them on TV, like, you knew Johnny Hockey, whether you were in Calgary or whether you're neck of the woods, Frankie, wherever. Like, he had that ability, and I think he had such a perfect persona for a Canadian market. Like, he didn't really take criticism personally. He was maybe a little too aloof for people's liking at times. He, you know, lived it up as a young celebrity in a Canadian hockey market, perhaps maybe a little bit much at times. He really had the perfect demeanor, and I think what separated him, guys, from other people is that as an American, he and his family were all in with the city of Calgary, and you just don't see that a lot, right? Like, in any Canadian market, like, you don't see a ton of American guys kind of embrace it the way the Gaudreaus did, and your heart hurts for Guy and Jane, because they were, almost honorary Calgarians themselves, right? And I think it's somber. He was this kid that they developed and drafted and convinced to sign, and he really was like a son to this city. And even driving down to the rink right now, I see 3 or 4 Gaudreau T-shirts and jerseys, and I just, even after he signed in Columbus, the most popular 2 jerseys in the Saladome were Iginla and Gaudreau, and it's
wow.
They people were attached to him. He embraced being in the Canadian market more than a lot of Canadian players do, and that's what I think led to the huge love affair. And I know that they booed him when he was back, but I think that was almost like, we love you, but we kind of have to boo you type of thing. But yeah, it's just it's incredible. Like, even driving into the Saladome parking lot right now, it's actually quite full, and like it's
paint to see.
Yeah,
paint to
wow.
see what we're looking at right now as you approach the Saladome.
Lots of cars. They're the construction site, right, for the new arena, so they've broken ground. Lots of cars. Like the lot that I want to go to here. Hold up. Let me just drive past the memorial, actually. Yeah, there's a lot of people around here. Just approaching the memorial on the west side of the lot here. There's a lot. There's dozens of cars here.
Wow.
Some news vans. God, there's a lot of people. Like, drive by. It's not loud at all. Like, it's quite quiet, sort of eerie almost. Yeah, it's actually quite a big memorial. I see a Kachuk jersey. I see an Oilers jersey. Like, it's grown quite a bit. There's a lot of flowers. It's quiet. It's almost it's like eerie. It's surreal. Like wow. It's
really speaks volumes,
describe.
I guess, to what he really did mean to that community there, huh?
Yeah, and like, he didn't shy away from being in a Canadian market. That was the thing, right? Like, he said yes to every community appearance. He was like the people that work in the charitable arm of the Flames Foundation. They loved him because they wouldn't have to really convince him to do stuff. He was always kind of the first guy to put his hand up for stuff. There's so many stories about him. Like, his dad would drop in from minor hockey kids in the city, and get into to skate with Johnny's dad. Like, how awesome is that? And like I said, like, there are players that come into these markets and they hide. Johnny was the exact opposite. He was front and center. He loved being here. He loved being a Calgary Flame, and he didn't shy away from the responsibilities that come with being a public figure in these cities, in this city, and that's not easy, right? It's just surreal right now. It's like a dark cloud over the city. Like, it's even driving through downtown, like, seeing the airports, like, it's like they've lost one of their own over here.
With Salim Valji, our TSN Calgary bureau reporter.
Salim, you're there every day, practices, games, you're covering the team. You get, an inside look, and, you get to have certain conversations with all these guys. Is there anything that kind of sticks out about your dealings with Johnny Gaudreau that maybe you want to share? A cool conversation you had, or just, something that gives us a look into the mind of Johnny Gaudreau?
A little bit. Like, I covered him my first 2 years here. I don't think people, and I guess you see it now under this tragedy, but he was loved. Like, guys loved him. I think, as a teammate, he was, like, by all accounts, a prankster. He was funny. Guys loved how comfortable he made new players. He was like a glue guy in the room where, he was someone that kind of, I think everyone could relate to. So, and you know more about this than me, Frankie, but, like, there are kind of different social circles in any workplace, right? And I think Johnny was the type of personality that could unite different social circles just because he was laid back, he was funny, he didn't take himself too seriously. There's stories about pranks that, that are probably for other people to share, but he was notorious for that. And I think he grinded a lot more than people realize. I think he kind of fed off this idea that sorry about that. There's a wasp here. But he fed off this idea that he was aloof and like almost like he didn't care. I think he cared a lot more than people realize. Like, I think he grinded in the gym a lot more. I think he worked way harder than he let people believe. And yeah, in terms of being a teammate, like glue guy, someone who was really funny, someone who was generally, maybe he didn't have a letter all the time, but he was the first to reach out to new guys on the team. He was, a guy that would organize dinners and stuff like that. And really someone that like, everyone loved just because of how laid back he was. And I think they really appreciated behind the scenes how hard he worked.
On the ice, do you have a favorite memory of Johnny Gaudreau?
I mean, the cliche is the overtime goal, right? I will go with this, though. I think there was a perception at times that, and I hate using these words, but that he was soft or that he didn't take hard coaching. Well, first of all, I think Bob Hartley was his first head coach in the league, and Frankie would know more stories about Bob Hartley than I would, but there are stories of him being a very, very demanding and hard on his players. But you know what? Like, the fact that he flourished under Daryl Sutter is a testament to I think how he matured over his career, right? Like, there's this idea that he's small and soft and doesn't go into the dirty areas of the ice. Well, the Flames had one of the best seasons in franchise history in 2022, and oftentimes, who was it that was killing games with Blake Coleman with the Flames up by a goal? It was Johnny Gaudreau, and it goes to show how much his game evolved, how he whether rightly or wrongly, there's a perception that existed, and he shot that perception into oblivion by how well he played under Sutter. And this idea is that, you know what, you can mature, you can evolve, and perceptions aren't reality sometimes. So the overtime goal is one thing, but to me, the thing that stands out is how he grew his game to the point where he could have probably gotten some Selke votes, right? And it goes to show, this guy spent his entire life battling and fighting the odds, right? Mid-round pick who's undersized, who would put pucks in his jock to weigh more for central scouting. And he was on track to become a really incredible player that maybe could have been one of the better American players in the league history. And he changed his game. And the fact he flourished under Daryl Sutter, who's very far from a player's coach, goes to show that, Johnny Hockey, he was a lot tougher, I think, than people gave him credit for. And he was a lot more receptive to hard coaching. And the skill is one thing. The overtime goal is incredible, and the hug with Sean Monahan after. But he really put a lot of perceptions to bed by how much he flourished under Daryl Sutter.
How would you expect for him to be honored by the Flames?
I think they're going to do a lot. I think they've already done really great work under tragic circumstances already. I can't imagine that any players will wear 13 even if it's not officially retired. I wonder, they've still got a couple of seasons left at minimum at the Dome. I wonder if maybe there's a chance to rename a certain part or maybe even have a statue. I'm not sure, but they're going to do. They do well in these things. The Flames recognize these moments. They do really well, and it's. I'm sure that they'll do a really incredible job. I think, even though this tragedy happened while he was a Blue Jacket, I think most people associate him with the Flames, and they'll do right by him, I think. And whether it's something in this building or the new one, I'm willing to bet that we'll see some sort of permanent Johnny Gaudreau monument here.
Salim, really appreciate taking the time to join us today. Obviously, really, really tough circumstances, but thank you so much for the time, and we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, hopefully under better circumstances, and thanks a lot for doing a really great job covering this under really, really terrible circumstances. You all have done a really good job under these trying times.
We're doing our best. Frankie and I, we're doing our best. Appreciate it, buddy. We'll chat again soon.
Yes, have a good one, gents. There
he goes. Salim Valji, our TSN Calgary Bureau reporter. Yeah, I mean, I keep hearing too a couple stories about his family and his father. And I met him one time. I've never met Johnny Gaudreau or his brother Matthew, but I have met the dad. He used to coach. He may still coach them, but like a Metropolitans travel team back in the day, like a super select team. And I used to do these play-by-play tournaments down in Minnesota pre-pandemic, and he was one of the coaches, and it was like 11-year-olds, I want to say. And I remember thinking like, oh, it's Johnny Gaudreau's dad. Like, imagine being a kid, being 11 years old, and being like, oh, I'm coached by Johnny Hockey's father.
Well, because you figure he would know what he's doing, right?
I mean,
great hockey players had great hockey dads.
Yeah,
which is cool. Like, they were instrumental, and I know my dad is the same way. Like, I remember him clearing off the pond near our house so we could go skating. Like, those are the kinds of things that the hockey dad does for you. And for Johnny Gaudreau, he was obviously very close with his father, and his father got him into the game. And it's so important. You need someone to give you that start.
Yeah. You think Adam Fantilli's father did the same thing in the same house, at the same pond?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly.
That's another thing too that I always think about, or I think about today. It's like Columbus, like the organization has been hit with so many obstacles over the last few years. Right, there was the death to Matisse Kivlnieks, the young goaltender, a couple of years back. The firework incident on July the 4th, and obviously, last year, the whole, it's a different circumstance situation, but, the Mike Babcock stuff at the beginning of camp, and now you've got to deal with this tragedy. It's like 3 of the last 4 years for this team. They've just been absolutely hit with just terrible stuff to overcome right before the start of training camp.
Like, I can't imagine. We're going into Labor Day, and, a lot of the players
starting to get back into the city.
Well, I would say a lot of the players would be there now. Like,
yeah.
Columbus is one of those teams generally where they go earlier. I know when I was playing, guys were reporting to Columbus unofficially for captain skates early to mid-August. Like, that was one of the things that they kind of had established there. But I think the industry standard is you're showing up or you're traveling on Labor Day and, 2 weeks of captain skates the day after Labor Day start. And you get into camp, and this is the time where everyone's going to be there. I can't even fathom what it's going to feel like for the guys that are there and the guys that are showing up, after this weekend. Yeah. How empty of a feeling that's going to be.
Well, his sister's wedding was this weekend.
It's awful.
Like, you would think he probably was going to celebrate, great family weekend, and then go to camp, go start getting ready for those captain skates and get ready for the season. And unfortunately, not the case. Tragically passing away last night. Him and his brother Matthew riding bikes and were struck by, which is alleged to be a drunk driver, unfortunately claiming the lives of both of those young men. Coming up at 6:30, so on the other side, we'll be joined by John Buccigross, who... This guy's known Johnny Hockey his entire career, longer than anybody who we've talked to so far today. So he should be able to give us some good insight on who Johnny was as a player and obviously as a person. So he'll join us on the other side. You listen to Overdrive. I'm Mike Distefano with Frankie Corrado here on TSN 2, TSN 1050, and the TSN app. Overdrive continues on TSN 1050 up on TSN 2. It's Mike Distefano filling in for Brian Hayes. We've got Frankie Corrado in for, I guess, Noodles and O-Dog. The boys will be back in due time, Tuesday, the very next show. You got 30 more minutes of replacement content.
Wow.
And then come next Tuesday, it's the real deal Holyfield.
I'm actually looking forward to watching the show, too.
Yeah?
Like, I don't know. I'm a fan of the show just like everyone else.
Absolutely.
It's nice to sit there and watch the boys for 3 hours.
I always tell people this. Like, before I started working here, before I, was Al's brother, before I got to do this, which is unfathomable to me to think 10 years ago that I was going to be sitting in this chair, I was always a fan of the show before I even started working here. Major fan of the show. And everyone I talk to who likes sports, big time fans of the show. So I'm sure everybody's excited to get you and I off the screen and get the original.
Oh, yeah.
The OG3 back on the mic.
Well, you mentioned before the break that you used to do some play-by-play.
Yeah.
So you were going down to some minor hockey tournaments doing some play-by-play. You ever want to pick up the headset again and fire up some play-by-play?
I've thought about it. I'd have to dust it off. Like, obviously,
you need reps.
We're talking pre-pandemic, but at Western University, I did 4 years there. Did play-by-play for the men's and women's. Called a couple big games, some OUA championships. Had the women, I believe, it was 2015, I think. Yeah, I think it was 2015. Won the national championship that year. So that was an incredible season.
You have a good goal call?
I got a couple decent calls, I believe, from that time.
Because you got to have different gears. Right, like if a goal's really big, you gotta belt it out, man.
There was a game that went to triple overtime, and it was a double header. So we had the men's who played in the afternoon, and then the ladies played in the afternoon, the men's played at night. This was a triple overtime, 1-0 game, 1-0 triple overtime, game-winning goal, and I went ballistic because it was over. Like it was the first goal I got to call the entire game, and it was over. It's like, oh, there we go, it's over. Yeah. And I think it sent the women off to the OUA championship. So, university hockey's got a college hockey.
We got a guy that knows a thing or two about college hockey.
Oh, he knows.
And a very, very good play-by-play guy. Pretty good golfer that we see on Twitter too.
Yeah, he can hit the sticks. All right, let's bring him in. How is it going? It's obviously not a great day, but John Buccigross, ESPN play-by-play hockey analyst, joining us. Bucci, thank you for taking the time on a tough day to chat with us.
You bet.
So I read your tweet this morning, obviously on the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau. You're somebody who, we talk about college hockey, you're synonymous with it, and Johnny hockey. To me, I was having this discussion with Frankie earlier, almost feels like one of the pioneer superstars of like the modern era with viral clips and viral goals. Obviously, think back to the national championship in 2012 and that goal that he scored. What does Johnny hockey mean to you?
Yeah, certainly, as you mentioned, as social media came into really exploding onto the scene, he's a child of the 90s, born in 1993. And so, his career kind of correlated with Twitter and social media and how things just kind of catch fire, and being such a, unique hockey player, being so small. We've had small hockey players before throughout history, Andre Richard and Marcel Dion and Theo Fleury and Marty St. Louis, but never really one like this. I mean, he was about 125 pounds when he went to college, 130 pounds. This was a tiny guy who was a fourth-round pick. Scouts knew he had first-round skill, but they just didn't believe that he could play in the NHL, or the odds were extremely low that he would be able to gain enough weight. So he was a fourth-round pick of Calgary. But and I remember going, covering, that's the great thing about doing play-by-play is you get these production meetings and you get to talk to the coaches. They're usually very revealing, very candid. They really do trust us a lot, and we get a group of players as well at the Frozen Four and at the NCAA regionals, and 4 or 5 will come in and we'll talk to them, and just to get to know them and get a vibe about their body language and things. I remember asking Kevin Hayes, his teammate at Boston College and current NHL player, can he really play in the league? He's like 140 pounds. And just the look he gave me was like, dude, you don't understand. This guy's an absolute wizard and has hockey sense that none of us can even touch. And then you couple the fast hands and the fast skating, and obviously even in his quiet demeanor, an ultra-competitive spirit, to have his brain work at that level for the entire game, which it has to when you're that small. You have to have hockey sense first to protect yourself, and then just to be able to play the game, because you're not going to be able to play it physically. So just really a special talent. I think he really did change the narrative in the NHL that a small player could be successful and could be a $9 million player when they're that good.
Bucci, the year that he wins the Hobie Baker, he's got 80 points in 40 games. Like, can you maybe just put that into perspective for us of how impressive of a season that is at the NCAA level? Like, it's not easy to just dominate and to just rack up that many points, but for him to be 2 points per game in that season, like, just provide a little context on that for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's 164 points in an NHL season, and it's hard to score goals in college hockey against some of those opponents, older players. And so, he really wasn't even going to come back to school that junior year. He had done enough, really, his first two. But his brother Matthew was, going to go to college, and he even let Johnny pick where they're going to go to school. And it was Boston College, so Johnny was like, hey, you're coming, I'm staying. And he stayed that extra year, and it got him an 80-point season. It got him a Hobie Baker. The team didn't win another national championship. 2014, it was in Philadelphia. That was my second Frozen Four I called, and they were in the Frozen Four, but lost in the semifinal game to Union, Shane Goss despair. And Union went on to win the title, beating Minnesota. So, yeah, it was something that year, and it really, like I said, it was all born because he wanted to, play with his brother Matthew, 2 years younger. So, and then he went on to the NHL, scored his first NHL goal with Calgary very early, and then hit the ground running the next season.
And super sad, obviously, along with Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew losing his life last night as well. With John Buccigross, do you have like a favorite memory or story that you can share with us about Johnny Gaudreau?
Just really seeing his family after every game. They really had kind of like a minor hockey, youth hockey, as we call it here in the States, feel about it. A big old school, people just don't have as many kids as they used to. They have smaller families, and there's smaller extended families, and there's just not a lot of noise. He came from like a noisy family, and he married into a noisy family. And it's just all this love and support that again. I grew up with my parents.
Oh, did we lose him? Let's see if we can get him back. I think we might have lost him there. Just talking about the big family, and I mean, you and I come from Italian families, so I know a thing or two when it comes to loud
noisy families. Yeah, that's par for the course.
Especially at sporting events, you get a loud, noisy family at a sporting event. I think we got him back. We got you, Bucci?
Yeah, sorry about that. We got some ridges here in Connecticut with some big stone mountains, and they sometimes interfere. But yeah, just like that big family vibe. Again, he married into it as well. Having the summer homes in Jersey going forward. His sister was supposed to get married today. Matthew and his wife pregnant. Just like investing, with compounding interest, the same thing with a big family. It just keeps compounding. There's more and more love. There's more and more support. There's a bigger network of loved ones, and it's just a great way to live. And I can imagine the joy and fun and that they had every summer in Jersey. So that's what I think about, just seeing that family after games, being in Calgary and, calling that Edmonton playoff series a couple years ago and seeing Dad outside down below the tunnel, hanging out there, with Matthew, with Keith Tkachuk as Matthew before he left for Florida came out. And so just seeing that family vibe, that his parents being involved, and obviously just a huge factor in their life. And I just can't imagine their devastation today.
One of the things we've seen a lot of today, Bucci, is people posting clips and highlights of Johnny Gaudreau. And, we've seen the first NHL goal. We saw the overtime goal against the Dallas Stars in a game where Jake Ottinger was unbeatable. I saw one pop up on my screen today, and it was Johnny Gaudreau with a sweet little pass onto the tape of Nathan McKinnon in the World Cup of Hockey in 2016. And you were on the call for that game for ESPN. It was a crazy 35, 40 seconds of hockey. Maybe just, bring us into that moment, what you're watching and what you're calling and how you felt watching it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first time I'm calling games with NHL players. I'd only done college up until that point. ESPN lost the hockey rights in 2004. So this is 12 years after that. So it's just to call a game in Toronto with NHL players, for me, I felt like I was 15 years old myself and I won a contest. So, and that North American team was such the star of that tournament. And that was when 3-on-3 hockey wasn't ruined yet by coaches and tactics. So it was just so much fun to watch, going up and down, breakaway after breakaway, and hanging with Darren Pang and Kevin Weeks, who are so much fun to be around and to work with, and to have that moment forever, that you're a part of. You're so lucky. That's what's great about play-by-play, is you're kind of part of documentation and history, and that's the allure of it. And so, yeah, to be a part of that in that moment with Gaudreau and McKinnon was just special. I'm very grateful for it, and especially now. And so it's just another moment he provided. He was just one of those players that every time he stepped on the ice, something like that could happen. He just had a possibility, an air of possibility around him, and that's what made those kinds of players so exciting. Even in Columbus, the last 2 years wasn't too exciting or too successful of a tenure, those 2 years. But, man, there were times I'll be watching those Blue Jacket games. I watched a lot of them where, again, he would just get around the ice just so beautifully and so quickly, and always churning those feet and those hands and that brain. You could see it working, trying to create opportunities for himself and his teammates. It was just thrilling to watch, and such a huge loss. It's such an amazingly awful tragedy. Every tragedy is, but there's so many tentacles and tributaries to it, and part of it is just the thrilling aspect of that kind of player we won't see anymore. And, he's set up for a Hall of Fame career if he had a strong, 30s, decade of in his 30s. He just turned 31. He was on his way to like a 1,200 game, 1,200 point guy, played, didn't get hurt despite his size, played a lot of games, showed up, productive. I think Columbus would have gotten better quickly. He would have been a part of that. Maybe eventually ended up in New Jersey or Philadelphia at the end of his career as a supplement to a team trying to win a cup. I just think it was all mapped up so well for him. Then we mentioned the family. We mentioned his sister's wedding, mentioned, his brother. It's just so many things, and just the tenderness and sweetness of the young man that everyone universally noticed. He really was a boy next door, an all-American boy. And that's what it is. He's like a Peter Pan aspect to him, just a youthfulness and that we all just love and yearn for and miss as we get older. And I think that's what makes this an especially brutal tragedy. So many factors.
Yeah, it's tough news. It's tragic, absolutely. And waking up to see that and read that this morning was tough. But lots of people clearly showing how he touched the hockey community with outpouring support. And Bucci, you gave us some great insight here as well. Thank you so much for joining us here today on A Tough One.
All right, thank you, boys. Have a good night.
Absolutely. There he goes. John Buccigross, ESPN hockey commentator. He knows Johnny hockey through and through, right? And when I said it, to me, Johnny Gaudreau was like one of the first modern day superstars of the college game. I guess it makes sense. He just said, well, that's kind of when Twitter and Facebook and all that really was coming to a head here, where things could go viral.
Yeah.
So those outstanding goals, this little shifty 5'8", 125-pound kid was out there scoring goals against men. Like you're playing college hockey, you're playing against 6'4", 230-pound behemoths.
Yeah.
And he's out there and just dancing around these guys and filling the net. 80 points. Outrageous.
80 points. Yeah.
Outrageous.
It's funny. We always have the conversations when you play on a hockey team, the junior guys versus the college guys, right? Like if you're, if it's a team party and there's, teams being picked for, certain activities.
It's not shirts and skins. It's
junior
college
guys, versus college guys. And, we would always just kind of chirp the college guys saying, it's just, you guys are just meat and potatoes. All you do is just kind of skate headfirst into the boards and try and run around. And they would say, you guys are all, you think you're the show HL and it's all skill and there's no grit. And, that kind of banter would go back and forth. But, if we were right, if the junior guys were right and it was, that difficult and that hard to play NCAA. Johnny Gaudreau, he sure proved that it wasn't for him.
Yeah,
having 80
he
points.
proved you wrong. That's not meat potatoes. That was flash and dash and skill.
Yeah,
what he put on display each and every night, and we'll miss watching it. And everyone around him's just gonna miss his aura and presence. Him and his brother Matthew. Tragic passing last night. All right, we'll take one more break. We'll come back. Best bets coming up. Jays playing tonight. I've got a couple wagers that I like for that one. I'm Mike Distefano and Frankie Corrado. You're listening to Overdrive on TSN 1050 and watching up on TSN 2 and the TSN app. It's a mail-it-in Friday edition of Overdrive, coming into the final couple of minutes of the summer, Frankie.
That's it, man. Boys are back.
Boys are back on Tuesday, which means you and I will not be here as often.
We will find other things to do with our time.
Yeah.
But it was great. You know what? I always have a great time doing the show. It was nice to fill in all summer. Thanks to everyone for listening. We had a great time. We had some stories to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, prior to the Johnny Gaudreau tragedy, we planned on having a segment talking about some of the stories that defined the summer. Like the Canada's Copa America run. That was big. That got the attention. Dronegate got the attention of the country. Summer McIntosh.
Big time.
Absolutely dominating at the Olympic Games. A 4x100 meter gold medal upset.
Yeah. The captaincy change for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's very significant.
Offer sheets. We saw offer sheets this summer.
And the Jays, just such a failure to launch.
Yeah.
All season for the Jays.
I guess that was a bit of a story, I suppose.
It's a story and a non-story because we've just been talking about it for so long now. But this is the reality of where the Jays are at, and they, I guess, to put a bow on the Jays, they want to be competitive next season. Can they do it?
They've looked decent of late. Again, haven't played the best competition. The Angels, they just steamrolled them a couple of times here, but they are inching their way to 500. If they can finish 500. I guess they'll be happy with that record. But speaking of today's best bets, powered by FanDuel, make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I've got two plays tonight. Got the Jays taking on the Twins, 8 o'clock first pitch. I like Vladdy to get you 2+ bases. Seems like that's just happening. Like Vladdy, whether it's a double like he hit last night or he's getting a couple of hits a game, 2+ bases, that thing's getting checked off quite often. And Spencer Horowitz, who's in the 4-hole, I like him to record an RBI tonight. Bring in a run. Got a couple guys hitting ahead of him who's been getting on base of late. Vladdy, one of them. He's got to get a knock at some point tonight. So I like those two bets. You can parlay those at plus 368 for tonight's game.
All right, buddy.
Today's best bets, powered by FanDuel. The first inning means as much as the ninth inning when you bet baseball on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. 18+ and physically located in Ontario.
Another big story, Patrick Laine traded to the Habs. We got some significant things that happened over the course of the summer. NFL was probably a little quieter.
Yeah, it was the contract standoffs was probably the biggest NFL story.
I guess the Cowboys would have been a story.
Well, how about the fact that the NFL might be pulling the reins back on Tom Brady when it comes to doing play-by-play this year? Well, he wants to be part of the ownership group of the Las Vegas Raiders. Okay. So apparently the NFL said, well, we can't have you out here trashing teams and coming out here doing a bunch of commentary and be the owner. I think there's, a little bit of friction there.
Yeah, he's probably got to pick the one that's going to pay him the most. Yeah. So, I don't know. That's a pretty lucrative broadcast deal he has there.
Yes, it is.
It'll be interesting to hear him in the booth.
It will be. Mail It In Friday brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. BP serving fish bowls and ice cold pints on the patio all summer long. So grab your sunscreen and let's have ourselves a great Labor Day weekend. The Boston Pizza patio is calling. All right, that does it for us here, Frankie. Solid stuff. The boys will be back Tuesday at
4 p.m.
They'll chat then.